We have breaking news on Nikita Zadorov's free agency status straight from the mouth of Patrik Allvin, confirming the very thing Canucks fans were most fearful of heading into this offseason. And rumors are now swirling around the potential surprise return of Casey DeSmith to Vancouver. We'll be breaking down all of that in this episode of Canucks Digest, but first make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you don't miss any updates surrounding the Canucks as we head into free agency just before the draft. But let's hop into the first topic of the day, which is Zadorov testing free agency. We see here in a tweet from Jeff Patterson saying that Allvin says Zadorov will test the UFA market, and he followed up on that saying, "I can't overpay one single player, and Nikita Zadorov was extremely good for us in the playoffs and a character guy. We did our best, and he decided he wanted to go somewhere else." And this was something that after the Dakota Joshua signing, it did seem like it would be very unlikely for them to get Zadorov. We knew that Lindholm was likely on his way out of those three candidates they were needing to bring back. And then with Joshua being signed, then you have Hronek being signed, now you have Blueger, Myers. It did seem very likely that Zadorov was going to be one of those guys we were unfortunately going to lose, like Ian Cole. And then like Ilya Mikheyev, we traded him to clear up draft space, and Sam Lafferty, to clear up cap space. And unfortunately, it just wasn't enough to get Zadorov to stay in Vancouver. He was considering taking a pay cut or a bit of a discount to stay in Vancouver. He loves the city, but just seemed like the price was too high to match. And when you look at his stats, he is warranting a very high price tag. You see here, once he came to Vancouver, he really started exploding, especially in the playoffs. Like Allvin was saying, he was really great for them in the postseason. He was great where he was scoring, he was contributing, and he was great with chemistry. Like he said, he was ruffling feathers. He was getting inside the heads of the opponents. He was great for Vancouver in the postseason. And you look at the roster holes, it was that big spot where Friedman is for now going to be stepping in for Zadorov. That was very worrisome, where you thought that if they were going to be able to keep Zadorov, he'd pair really well with Juleson. They're both really good hitters. But if you have Juleson with Friedman, like I said in yesterday's video, where I don't think that those guys are going to be able to get it done as a tandem unless they were to bring Zadorov in. So with that, they will have a vacancy in that third left defenseman spot. So with that, we are looking at some potential replacements for him. The first of which, I know we've said it before, Brendan Dillon. We've mentioned him many times. I think this is a guy who would be a solid Zadorov replacement just because of his experience, of his big body. He loves to hit. He loves to fight. We saw him fight Evander Kane earlier this season. He does great things when he's on the ice. He had a plus 20 rating last season with the Jets. So bringing him over to a team like Vancouver, I think would really help him contribute to a great season as well with Vancouver, especially if he is a hometown guy. He'll pick up the team chemistry really quickly. Tocchet is a player's coach, and I think he is a very good team player where he would fit in very well. And I think him and Juleson would be that wrecking ball line where if you have Juleson not with Zadorov now, like I said, I don't think Friedman will help get it done with him. Nothing against Friedman. I just think that they need someone bigger and to go with Juleson. I think Brendan Dillon is that guy where they can go with him and they can have a nice tandem running there where they're getting hits, they're ruffling feathers, they're setting the tone physically for a Vancouver team that definitely needs bigger physical guys. We saw them bring back Joshua, who I think will finish top 5 in hits next season because of how he was last season and how this team was without him. And he's a goal scorer. Then you got Tyler Myers coming back. That's great. Hronek coming back. That's fantastic. So if you go out and get a guy like Brendan Dillon to add more beef to this team and make them stronger as well as faster like they're trying to do in free agency, we see some things being shuffled around as far as the current roster. So I think Brendan Dillon will be a great fit in that sense. And the second one I would want to touch on is Mike Riley from the New York Islanders. This is one that's kind of a sneaky one. He doesn't have a big cap hit of $1 million. So if they go out and get him, I don't think it's going to be one that breaks the bank. I don't know what exactly his potential would be on a team like Vancouver, but if he's paired with Juleson, I think he would be more of like the Tyler Myers on that line with Juleson, where he's going to be that bigger, lankier guy, and Juleson will be the wrecking ball. So rather than having a wrecking ball third line, I think they would have more of a complementary third defensive pairing. So I think that's where Mike Riley could fit in. And he fit in well on a team like the Islanders, where they weren't as consistent through the regular season. They did make it to the playoffs, not very great in the playoffs. But I think he's someone who can contribute to a team very well, like Brendan Dillon, where he's not going to be a liability, and he's not going to be a liability as far as finance is concerned. So if they go out and get a guy like him, he has a smaller cap hit than Brendan Dillon. So if you can't get Dillon, you go for Riley, and then you go from there as far as your other ones. Well, we know they want to go get Jake Gensel. So if you can get a guy like Mike Riley for a cheap deal to fill in that left defensive spot, then you have to only go after that right wing spot. So I think that would be really interesting to see them go that route if they do decide to abandon ship on Brendan Dillon. But that seems to be one that fans are seeming is the most likely, and reports coming out saying that he is seeming to be interested with Vancouver. We saw that a few months ago before the season ended. So again, those would be two Zadorov replacements that I would like to see come to Vancouver. We know that they're not going to have too much room to work with as far as cap space, but with Zadorov going to test free agency, this does bring a little bit financial relief. Not as far as team relief. We are going to be stressed out till they find that replacement, but at least from a financial standpoint, it does make it more likely for them to go out and get a guy like Jake Gensel if they're not having to worry about a big contract like Zadorov. But with that, let's hop into the second topic of the day, which is DeSmith coming back. And we see here from Rick Dhaliwal that on his show, he had a big report on Casey DeSmith and Thatcher Demko. So this was just a small section of it saying, I can't report a Demko injury. I'm spitballing and wondering if something's up with his rehab. They just changed philosophies this week and they were supposed to sign this kid, this Sawchenko kid for Abbotsford. And now they didn't sign him. And now it looks like they're going to go back to DeSmith. So something's up. I'm trying to figure it out. And this was a bit surprising where the writing seemed to be on the wall with Shilovs being the backup going into this season after a very impressive playoff performance. However, in the report, Dhaliwal was saying as well, there was some worry about how he's able to handle those long shots through traffic. We saw in the postseason that was really his biggest weakness as far as a goaltender. In close and in the crease, you're not getting past him, at least not very easily. But from a distance through traffic, we saw Evan Bouchard really exploited that weakness in Shilov's game. So that was where he got exploited. So if you send him back down to Abbotsford to fill in that spot, maybe he doesn't stay in Abbotsford the full season. If something happens, God forbid something happens to Demko or with DeSmith, you trade him at the deadline or whatnot. I think that'll be something where the story with Shilovs, if he goes back down to Abbotsford, I don't think that is over as far as his time as a Canuck in Vancouver. But I think with you bringing back DeSmith, it is a more reliable veteran. You look at his stats. He didn't have the flashy season, but Vancouver did have to rely on him quite a bit with the health of Thatcher Demko, especially with him coming off of back-to-back injury-riddled seasons. So can't blame Vancouver with wanting to go with a more veteran insurance policy rather than the young player in Shilovs. He is emerging. I think having that playoff experience this season definitely threw him to the wolves, and he did survive and come out of the woods a little bit unscathed. He did get attacked a little bit by those wolves in Edmonton and Nashville. But again, if he has more time to develop in Vancouver and Abbotsford with that experience, I think when he comes back to Vancouver, should something happen with Demko, should something happen with DeSmith, I think he'll be a lot more prepared for that. And those long shots aren't going to go in as much. He's going to be well equipped to stop them. Again, it's just something that a young goaltender is going to have to adapt to for the NHL. And I think he's going to be able to do that with a little bit longer in Abbotsford. Again, I don't think DeSmith is a bad backup choice for Vancouver. I just think that they had to rely on him way too much this season. And when he was in a limited capacity, he was great. That one playoff game he had, the two playoff games he had for us were pretty solid, including a win where he did play lights out for 99% of the game. He did allow in that one goal, but he was lights out in that game. So I think DeSmith is still a solid backup option. But instead of running a 1A and 1B tandem that you would with Demko and Shilovs, I think you're going back to a 1 and 2 tandem with Demko and DeSmith. It's nothing against DeSmith. I just think that he is a victim of circumstance sometimes when he's thrown into these back-to-back starts or filling in for Demko when he's hurt. I don't think he's as strong in that respect. But again, he could have a bounce-back season. This is a team where we've seen guys have career years out of nowhere. So DeSmith could be on tap for that next season. Who knows? But with that, let's hop into the third topic, which is everyone's favorite topic, which is comment of the day. And we see here from Rod Morgan, he says, Allvin and Rutherford are playing 4D chess. And I totally agree with this. We don't know exactly what their major game plan is as far as the end game, but they do have a plan. Zadorov apparently was clearly not a part of that plan. So you do have to move on. I don't think that they're not going to go after him. I don't think they're just going to ride with Friedman heading into next season. So again, I think they're going to have something planned. They have something lined up. They're still interested in Gensel, and then they have Toffoli as a backup plan. So there are avenues for this Vancouver team to go as far as left-hand defenseman and right wing. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. There's going to be great news coming at us every day up until next season, more so especially in this July month with free agency coming up. Can't wait to bring you guys amazing content. That's going to do it for this episode. I've been your co-host, Griffen. Take care.